we're attempting to sail Florence down the Mozambique Channel to South Africa as part of our voyage around the world. After a beautiful downwind sail from Mayotte in the last episode, the weather was forecast to change for the worse, so we have pulled into Fogo Island in Mozambique to seek shelter and wait until it's safe to continue.
We were not alone in making the decision to stop here. 5 other yachts also decided that this was the best course of action. We're all looking for the next opportunity in the weather forecast to sail on from here, and at the moment that looks to be 3 days away.
Well, it was really nice when we arrived and dropped anchor, but this is more what we were expecting here. Just a rain cloud, rain front has just come in and it's suddenly howling 25 knots through the rigging. And this is why we are anchored here and not further out there. And actually there should be less wind here than there is out in the Mozambique Channel, because as the wind gets closer to the land, the friction of it going over the land instead of the sea slows the wind down, reduces the wind speed. Out in the middle of the Mozambique Channel it should be at least another 10 knots I think according to the forecast, and that would not be fun. So we're really happy that we came in here and we're anchored here instead, even though it is a bit miserable now. When the weather cleared, we were invited to take a look around the island.
We had thought that this island would be uninhabited, but there's actually a team of people building an eco-resort here, and they were happy to show us around this private island. There's just a kitchen and a few huts here at the moment, but plans for much more.
This is why we're anchored on the other side of the island and not out here. Just walked over to the windward side and it's just a sea of whitecaps. Very happy not to be out there, very happy to be waiting until this southerly wind has gone through, and then hopefully we'll get something a little bit more friendly to sail on down south to Richards Bay. We were content to sit on the beach for a while and watch as our boats rolled around without us on board. This is not a calm anchorage, but it is much better than being out at sea right now.
We're waiting for this strong southerly wind to blow through and for the northeasterlies to return, but we've been waiting here for a few days now and constantly checking the forecast every day for every new update to see if we can sail on. It's finally looking good enough for us to sail on, so we're going to set off tomorrow and sail at least as far as the next bolt hole down the Mozambique coast. But if we're lucky, we might get the opportunity to sail all the way to South Africa without stopping.
We are Matt and Amy. We left England in 2016 on a mission to sail around the world. Just the two of us on our 37-foot sailboat Florence. 5 years on, we have sailed over 35,000 miles across 3 oceans, exploring new countries and cultures along the way. So we are leaving Fogo. The weather has come good, at least to make the next hop down the coast, 340 miles to Bazaruto. Possibly not to get all the way down to South Africa, but at least we can make another hop down. It's fantastic at the moment. We are absolutely cracking along at over 7 knots. All of the boats decided to leave the anchorage on this weather window today. One left early in the morning, one left at lunchtime. We left at about 3 p.m. and half an hour later the other 3 behind us have left. So we've got a real train of boats going across here. There's 2 50-footers just behind us and a 40-footer. So it'll be interesting to see if they can catch Florence, but she is absolutely flying at the moment.
bean and lentil soup again. We're down to basic store-covered ingredients now, so I made some soup and some bread before we left, but I'm not sure how many more days of beans and lentils we can take. When you're sailing along at 7 knots, it means your soup has to be out of a mug instead of a bowl, so that you can put it down and wedge it, and also hold it with one hand so that you can hold on if you need to.
So it doesn't slop out as well?
Yeah, it's also so it doesn't slop out.
Well, after a very promising start sailing out from Fogo, the breeze has dropped off quite a bit, but the main problem is that just a sloppy sea stay out here, and it's just rocking Florence back and forth and just shaking all of the wind out sails, and that's really affecting our ability to make distance forwards. It's actually really nice sailing with some other boats for a change, although we cannot see them anymore. We could all the way through the evening, and last night we could see their lights on the horizon as they were jibing back and forth and everybody trying different things. It's really nice to be in a group of boats, and they've had a radio sked this morning just to give everybody's positions and give an update on how everybody's doing and what they're thinking with the weather. And we could hear all of that, but unfortunately we've got a problem with our radio, a problem we've known about for a while now, in that we can't transmit very far. We can receive, but we can't transmit very far. A problem we're hopefully going to sort out in South Africa by fitting a new VHF aerial. But it's nice to hear where everybody else was, and we're still kind of in the middle of the pack, actually towards the front of the pack of boats that we set off with, which is very good for Florence. We just got a light patch for the next maybe 4 or 6 hours, and then it's going to start coming in more from the east, and that'll put us more onto a reach with a little bit more breeze, and we'll be able to sail much better in these waves then. We'll have a little bit more pressure to work with. But it's a glorious day out here, and we're going downwind. It's lovely. We just had a massive wind shift. Take a look at the chart plotter for the course change we had to do, or were able to do. We just put in a jibe from going dead downwind with those sails slapping about and not filling, to sailing along on a beam reach with a spinnaker up, making 5 knots, which is much nicer. The only trouble with that was, unfortunately for Amy, she was having her morning sleep and it came smack bang in the middle of that, so she had to get up and help me take the spinnaker pole down, jibe the boat and put the spinnaker up. So now she's gone back to bed, but it's difficult to get enough rest even in good conditions sailing, especially when it's a little bit shifty.
For the last 24 hours, and we're at or in front of where the model thinks we should be. Okay, that's really helpful, thank you. I just plotted that out. It's 251 miles from where we are right now, and if we said we didn't want to get there any later than 6 a.m. on Wednesday, that's 48 hours, just under 48 hours, and that requires an average speed between now and then of 5.6 knots. Okay.
When you get a bunch of boats together, there's always a lot of discussion about the weather, especially down this section, so it's kind of interesting having 3 other boats close by, all within VHF range, and we're all trying to work out whether or not we should head on down to South Africa or whether we should pull in and stop. At the moment the consensus is to try and push on, but there are a couple of southerly wind sections coming up that we need to try and avoid. So we had a look at the latest forecast and it looks good to go. It looks good to go all the way to Richards Bay, but we are going to be in a race against a storm which is coming up to Richards Bay with a strong southerly. Even though there is just enough wind for us to sail at the moment on Florence, we have turned the engine on and we are now motor sailing. Hopefully we should only have to motor sail for 6 or 8 hours and then we should get some wind to be able to sail.
This is why we are motor sailing. We want to get to Richards Bay in South Africa. Northerly winds are good and help to blow us in the right direction, but the southerly winds make progress more difficult as we have to zigzag upwind, which means it's much slower and causes more wear and tear on Florence and us. But here in the Mozambique Channel, we also have to contend with the strong currents. The current helps us along, giving us another couple of knots of boat speed. But if the wind turns southerly and blows against the current, it can cause big, steep and potentially damaging waves. So planning our weather routing becomes more complex in order to avoid this.
We have 2 southerly winds on the forecast. The first one we will have to sail through, but the second one we want to avoid by arriving in Richards Bay just before it hits. For the first southerly, we want to position Florence so that we avoid those big waves, and that means getting past this section of current before the southerly arrives.
So that's why we're currently motor sailing, to give Florence a bit more speed and ensure we can position ourselves out of the strongest current before the wind turns southerly.
We are on the express train south. We have hit the Mozambique current and we are absolutely flying south. Last night the wind just gradually built. We went from motor sailing to properly sailing, and then we started to get the first hints of that current, and then the boat speeds across all the boats, us and the boats with us, just started rocketing up. We were doing 9 knots and now we're a day on. The wind shifted around behind and we're absolutely flying. Got some waves helping us surf as well. Awesome sailing. But we're just coming up to the bit which is going to be the worst part of the trip, and we know it's coming. It's on the forecast. We knew there was going to be a bit like this coming up, but we are not looking forward to it. So I've just downloaded the latest weather files via the satellite phone, and we're looking at an area ahead of us between us and Richards Bay in South Africa where we know we're going to hit headwinds. There's a big southerly wind coming up from the south, and we're going with some northerlies getting blown down towards, and at some point the northerly winds stop and the southerly winds take over, and that's going to create really big waves and steep waves, and it's going to be really uncomfortable. But there's no choice really to do anything about it. We're just going to have to go through it, and the reason we're going really fast now is because the faster we go now, the slower we can go through that horrible patch. So we can slow right down, try and make the motion on Florence easier, try and take it a bit easier on Florence, there's less strain on her, because after that, once that strong southerly wind has kind of gone through and clocked around to come more from the southeast or the east, then we need to put the hammer down again to try and get to Richards Bay before the next southerly wind comes through, and that we really don't want to hit because that's going to be stronger. So it's all about timing and trying to position ourselves for the least worst of the weather, I guess, rather than the best at the moment. So how are you feeling about this weather we've got coming up tonight?
I'm trying not to get too worked up or anxious about it, to be honest, because we've chosen to take this route and we knew that we were going to get hit by a southerly, or it was very likely that we were going to get hit by a southerly at some point. So we just got to prepare ourselves and the boat as best we can, and we're really lucky that we've had some warning that it's going to happen. So I'm just trying to see it as a period of time that we've got to get through before we get some more good sailing, hopefully, on the way to Richards Bay. But it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun at all, and I have to admit that every single time that we download the weather forecast, there is a big part of me that is just hoping that it's disappeared and this suddenly doesn't exist anymore, but unfortunately that's not happening, so we're just going to have to deal with it. In order to prepare for the weather that's coming, we've both been trying to just rest as much as possible today, because we know we're unlikely to get any decent sleep for the next day or so. So it helps to be as well rested as possible. I've just been round the boat, we've been checking that everything that needs to be strapped down is strapped down and isn't going to chafe, and just preparing food and things that are going to make our lives easier over the next few days. So I've washed my hair because I'm not going to feel like a shower tomorrow, that's for sure. But the sailing at the moment is absolutely gorgeous, and it's hard to believe that it's going to be very different from this in just a few hours' time.
In fact, we had an unforecasted change in the weather even sooner than that.
Well, that all got a bit hectic. We were just washing up and trying to get ready for our night watches and this wind that's coming, and the breeze just really picked up from behind us. So coming from the north, we've jibed the main, we've dropped the main, we've dropped the pole, we've taken the staysail down, and we've put the Genoa out. So it seems like it's a bit better and settling down now. So I think we might head a little bit more east and try and get ourselves a bit more sea room, but we are still in the current, so hopefully it won't arrive until we get out of this current.
Yeah, east is more into the current though, that's the only problem.
Yeah.
So now doing between 9 and 10 knots over the ground, which means we've got a lot of current with us still, and we've just got the Genoa up, the full Genoa out, which is makes us feel much more comfortable, because we're already anxious about the night that's coming when we're supposed to have bad winds from the south, and we've just suddenly got these really strong winds from the north which we weren't supposed to have. They were supposed to die off, so and we had everything up. So this is a more conservative sail plan. We're much happier now. We can just pull a string and get rid of all the sail area instead of having to do half an hour or 45 minutes work on deck, which is what we just had to do. So see what happens.
Yeah, on the forecast for now we should have been motoring, so I guess we should be grateful that we're not having to motor. But we're now just over an hour late going into our night watches, and we need to be really careful that we actually get some sleep tonight, because it's going to be a difficult night, so I'm going to go to bed.
We have made a plan that once we reach the no wind zone between the northerly and southerly winds, we're going to turn and motor due south in those calm conditions. This is for two reasons. Reason one is that it means when the southerly wind does reach us, we will have more distance between us and the Mozambique coast as a safety precaution against getting stuck on a lee shore. The second reason is more tactical. Once the southerly arrives, the forecast shows it gradually shifting round to the east. By getting further south now, when that wind shift happens, we will be better positioned to sail around the inside of the curve, meaning we will have a better wind angle and sail a shorter distance than if we had just motored southwest directly towards this new wind.
6 hours later that night, we hit the southerly wind, and we're on the foredeck to hoist the staysail and start sailing upwind. Join us next time to see how we get on and whether we make it into Richards Bay before the next southerly storm. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and click the bell to get a notification when the next video is released. And let us know what you think of the video. We love reading all your comments.
We would like to thank everyone who supports us, and especially our star patrons.